Camp Aliceville, Alabama, October 1945. Guard towers stretched long shadows across the camp yard, where 37 German prisoners stood lined up for processing. American soldiers recorded their ages, a task that made them uneasy in ways battlefield losses never had. These were not experienced fighters or battle-hardened troops. Wary boys, only 14 to 17 years old, drafted during the regime's desperate final months, when the draft age had fallen to children and elderly men because most others were dead, captured, or had fled. They stood stiff and silent, faces carefully empty, bodies tight with the alertness of children who had learned that showing emotion could bring punishment. When the processing officer, speaking through a translator, explained that they would receive enough food, medical treatment, and access to recreational facilities, one boy stepped forward. 15-year-old Peter Hoffman from Hamburg raised his hand and asked softly in nervous German, "Are we allowed to smile here?" Peter had been only 12 when the war began, old enough to sense that something important was happening, yet too young to understand the full consequences of what Germany had set loose across Europe and the world. He had watched his older brother leave in uniform. He had listened to his father, too old to fight, speak about duty, sacrifice, and the regime's promises of certain victory. Like many children, he believed what adults told him. He thought Germany was defending itself against enemies who wished to destroy everything it had built. By the time Peter turned 14 in March 1945, belief no longer mattered. The government was falling apart. Allied armies were closing in from east and west. Desperation led to boys being taken from schools and placed in uniforms. Peter was pulled from his classroom with every other boy his age. They were given only basic training: how to shoot a rifle, throw grenades, dig trenches, and obey commands without hesitation. The training lasted just 3 weeks. Then they were sent to defensive positions near Berlin. Children were ordered to stop armies that had already proved unstoppable. In Peter's unit, boys ranged from 13 to 16. None wanted to be soldiers, but their wishes did not matter. The regime demanded obedience. Refusal meant punishment for both the boys and their families, so they foretold trying the chaotic final weeks. When German defenses were collapsing and survival depended more on luck than skill, Peter watched boys die, not as numbers or reports, but as friends from school and nearby streets. He saw them bleed in trenches, cry out for help that never came, and die frightened, in pain, and far too young. Those memories burned into his mind and would never fully disappear. The trauma would shape his life forever, perhaps even more, because he was so young. His capture came in late April, just days before Germany officially surrendered. Soviet troops overran their position. Peter and 36 other boys were taken prisoner, along with a few adult supervisors. The Soviets were harsh, but not cruel. They seemed almost uncomfortable imprisoning children. After quick processing, the boys were sent west into American-controlled areas as part of early prisoner exchanges. The transfer to American custody took place in early May, during the confusion that followed surrender. American officers examined the boys with faces filled with both sympathy and anger. Sympathy for children forced into war, and anger toward the system that had sent them there. One American captain said something in English that the translator explained as, "What kind of system sends children to die? These boys should be in school, not in prison camps." But prison camp was. They had been sent there because, officially, they were prisoners of war, even though they were still children. American military regulations required that all captured German personnel be processed and held until proper repatriation systems were in place. So, in late summer, the boys were transported across the Atlantic along with thousands of adult prisoners. They arrived in the United States in September and were assigned to different camps. Camp Aliceville was chosen for prisoners considered low-risk men, captured late in the war, with no ties to regime leadership and unlikely to cause trouble during dissension. The 37 boys were placed there because they posed no security threat. In addition, the camp commander, Colonel Henderson, had personally requested their transfer after learning that children were being kept in facilities meant for adult soldiers. As a father himself, Henderson understood that teenagers needed different care. He wanted to make sure American custody did not deepen the trauma already caused by forced service in combat. He instructed his staff to handle the boys with special sensitivity. They were to remember that, despite their status, these were children. The goal was to provide stability and support, not just confinement. The boys, however, knew none of this. As they stood in line during processing, they only knew what life had taught them. Adults in power were dangerous. Weakness led to punishment, and survival depended on constant alertness. Any emotion could be seen as disrespect or defiance, so they hid behind blank faces and strict obedience, trying to become invisible. The procedures moved forward step by step. The soldiers photographed them, took fingerprints, issued prisoner numbers, and conducted medical exams. These revealed malnutrition, untreated wounds, and the physical damage caused by months in harsh conditions. The medical staff worked carefully and kindly, but the boys remained tense. They expected pain. They expected cruelty. They believed kindness would soon turn harsh. Later, Colonel Henderson spoke to them through a German-speaking chaplain. His voice was calm and deliberately gentle. He explained the rules, daily schedules, and light work assignments suited to their age. He promised proper food, medical care, and access to education. He told them they were safe, that captivity would not be brutal, and that the goal was to keep them healthy until they could return home. The boys listened without reaction. They had heard promises before. They had learned that authority figures rarely kept them. Their blank expressions remained a shield against hope and disappointment. Peter spoke in German, and the chaplain translated. The question lingered in the humid Alabama air. The American soldiers fell silent. Their caution could not disappear so quickly after months of fear. Teenagers should joke, laugh, and show pleasure while eating. This quiet suggested deep psychological damage, not just physical weakness. After the first dinner, Miller approached Peter, whom the others seemed to follow. Speaking through a translator, he asked if the meal had been good and whether anything was missing. "The food is good," Peter said, carefully in broken English. "Very good. Better than before. Thank you." His words were polite, but guarded. Miller gently pressed on. "Did you enjoy it? Did it make you happy?" Peter hesitated, weighing his answer. Then he replied, "We are grateful. We are prisoners and do not deserve such treatment. We will work hard to earn it." The words shattered Miller's heart. These boys believed they had to earn food. They thought basic care was a privilege. Enjoyment felt forbidden. Miller tried to explain. "You don't have to earn food. People eat because they need to. You are children, and children deserve proper meals. You're allowed to enjoy them. If you like something, you can say so. That's just being human." Many had nightmares that disturbed the barracks. Some experienced panic attacks when startled. Others slipped into distant, disconnected states. Suddenly, a small rabbit appeared near the edge of the garden. Christmas revealed how much had changed. The camp organized services, special meals, and small gifts. The boys celebrated with genuine excitement. They sang German carols, made decorations, and exchanged handmade presents that symbolized friendship. On Christmas Eve, Peter spoke to the group. He did not ask permission. He simply spoke from the heart. One guard translated his words. "We arrived expecting punishment. We believed captivity would be cruel. Instead, you showed us kindness. You fed us, healed us, and helped us learn again. Most importantly, you taught us that we are allowed to smile, that happiness is not weakness." Hoffnung the rabbit taught us first, and you remind us every day. We are grateful. Many guards were in tears by the time he finished. Colonel Henderson openly wiped his eyes. What they had achieved was more than discipline. It was healing. Humanity had overcome ideology. Compassion had succeeded where punishment never could. In spring 1946, news arrived about repatriation. The boys would soon return to Germany, passing through relocation camps before rejoining families or entering foster care if none remained. They felt mixed emotions. They longed for home but feared what they would find. Destroyed cities, lost relatives, unfamiliar lives. They also worried about leaving the safety of Camp Alabama. Peter wrote to his mother, describing how former child soldiers had learned to smile again. Her replies expressed relief and gratitude. She prepared a home for him in ruined Hamburg, doing her best amid the rubble. The final weeks were bittersweet. The boys asked the guards about life after war and how to keep their emotional strength. Miller spent extra time with Peter, giving advice about civilian life and hope. He gave him his address in Georgia and told him to write whenever he needed support. For Peter, the question, "Are we allowed to smile?" became a symbol. It represented how the regime had stripped children of their natural feelings. But it also represented recovery. Asking that question had been the first step toward understanding that happiness was a human right, not a privilege. He taught his children and grandchildren the importance of emotional honesty. He warned them never to silence their feelings for ideology or authority. He told them about Sergeant Miller, Colonel Henderson, and the guards who chose healing over punishment. In 1985, Peter returned to Alabama. Camp Alabama, closed for decades, remained as a historical site. He walked through the grounds where he had once been imprisoned and healed. He stood where the garden had been, where the rabbit had first appeared. He wept not from sorrow, but from gratitude. Gratitude that mercy had been shown, that broken children had been given a chance to recover. Sergeant Miller was there too, elderly but recognizable. They embraced two old men, connected by a shared past. "I never forgot your question," Miller said. "When you asked if you were allowed to smile, it showed what that system had done to children. I'm glad you learned the answer was yes," Peter replied. "You taught me more than that. You taught me that even enemies can choose compassion. That healing is possible. That being human never requires permission." They stood together in the quiet afternoon light. The former prison was peaceful now, marked by plaques that told part of the story, but not the full depth of what had happened there. Peter Hoffman passed away in 2003. Surrounded by family, he was at peace with his past and grateful for the mercy that had saved him when he was 15 and afraid. At his funeral, Friedrich's drawing of Hoffnung was displayed prominently, a reminder that healing often begins with small moments. A rabbit in a garden, a question about smiling, and an answer that said, "Joy is always allowed."